Test, test. Are we doing all good? Okay, so, let's get started with this, I suppose. Okay, so first, hello there everyone, and let me address that I don't have anything personal against Techie or any of his friends. In fact, I love them all quite a bit. Yes, I do have Tech blocked on Twitter, but let me say that's only because I just got tired of seeing the brain rot he posts in that cesspool on my timeline. Again, nothing personal against him, but I feel like we have to address this situation going forward, especially because this is going to be, overall, in my opinion, bad for the community if we just let it persist. Anyways, as far as the brain rot is concerned, that was funny at first, but then the reason why I blocked Techie on Twitter and stuff is just, it eventually was funny, but then it just started getting annoying seeing on my timeline, so that's why I blocked him. Again, nothing personal, it's just, that is just something separate from everything. Now, this discussion is simply going to be about the anniversary rewards, and why his take that players are being too greedy is factually incorrect, and we'll address each argument as we go. So, first, the argument that we're asking for Kuro to, for lack of a better term, bankrupt, quotation marks, themselves, in his opinion, to give players rewards. No, that is not what we're asking. I know you're exaggerating things for clickbait and audio bits for entertainment, but if you actually sit down and take your head out of your arse to understand what we're asking, the reality is we just want the rewards to be able to be consistent with not only the precedent Kuro has set previously, both in WUWA and their other projects like PGR, but also what's common in other gachas. I have spent some amount of time detailing on my previous video that the anniversaries we see from Hoyo, and with this specific anniversary from Kuro, are far, and I mean far, from the norm in the industry. As players, we should never, ever be settling for less. And unfortunately, you and everyone else that joined the gacha during COVID are far too Hoyo-pilled to understand what anniversaries were like. And though you have been branching out to games like Wizardry and especially Limbus Company and Snowbreak, and I commend you for that, you haven't had the degree of experience with those types of gachas that many of us veterans like Ryukyu and I have. And yes, I'm aware that you are aware of at least some Nikkei anniversaries, even if you may not really have properly experienced them yourself. But sit down and prepare to get educated. To begin with, the argument that giving a minimum of 80 pulls, plus the other bonuses we all agree on, such as the 100% anti-guarantee banner with reduced pity, would be like Kuro cutting off their arm and giving it to players is absolutely boundless. Other games function absolutely fine with providing hundreds of pulls easily, or even free standard selectors or heavily discounted paid selector or one-time 10-pull gacha for a random limited from a select pool. And the excuse that those games either have higher pity, no pity, or cost less to develop and doesn't track. And let me give you two very specific examples of why those excuses do not hold water. The first and most significant example, Granblue Fantasy. To start, yes, it has 300 pity to spark a choice item. Yes, that didn't exist until 2016. Yes, it's a stinking browser game from 2014 with dated ass graphics. You'd think, with this information, it's a relatively cheap game to develop, and that's insanely predatory. But the reality is, since 2017, the game was anything but cheap. For starters, Granblue has a base SSR or 5-star rate at 3%, not 1%. Not 0.8% either, 3%. They also double this twice every month during special limited banners, which are the best value for the dollar at 6% 5-star rates. On top of this, Granblue was also consistently doing collabs with many popular IPs at least once or twice a year. Games like Street Fighter, the Tales series, Code Geass, Attack on Titan, other games at the time such as Lord of Vermilion, and more. Not cheap. On top of this, they were consistently hosting IRL events every year with the big Grand Blue Fest at the end of the year at a huge airport venue, plus slightly smaller Summerfest events at other venues throughout Japan for roughly an average of 4 events per year. Not cheap. They also have consistently hosted a pop-up cafe in Tokyo, like you see all those other animes do ever since year 1, and I will reiterate, not cheap. And of course, now let's get to the creme de la creme of the matter. Since August 2016, Cygames announced they would be developing Grand Blue Versus with the assistance of Arc System Works, as well as Grand Blue Relink with the assistance of Platinum Games. I haven't even started with a story for this, but I can already tell you the answer that funding-wise, this was absolutely not cheap, and also arguably the most expensive venture Cygames did out of all of this. Now, as far as Versus is concerned, it was a relatively smooth sailing, but based on the initial concept for the game, Arc System Works wanted to develop something that would have some logical merit to exist and tie in with the mobile game. And so, this led to the creation of Grand Blue's first and best anniversary event series, What Makes the Sky Blue. This series was planned as a 3-year series of events that would release piece by piece during each anniversary, and so as a result, Cygames had to develop a long-standing plan that would require a ton of work and organizing all their other materials like their live events to reflect the story's experience with each release in a way that would make those anniversaries mean something. This basically meant that from Cygames' perspective, their anniversary wasn't just a single patch in a single month, but a year-long process each year, with character releases and other stories tied to it somewhat that were released throughout the year. This all ultimately came together and led into the capstone story in 2019, followed immediately by the marketing campaign for Versus' official release in 2020 that revealed the major antagonist for Versus would be the very same character that was revealed in the second of the 3 anniversary events for the mobile game, and along with the marketing materials came the big reveal in the developer interview that the antagonist, Beelzebub, was developed exclusively for Versus and was the very reason Cygames chose to develop the anniversary event series, which also led to the creation of other fan favorites like Sandalphon, Belial, Lucilius, plus further lore expansion characters Shalom and Sahar respectively. Overall, it was a huge series of events that took meticulous planning, effort, and care on Cygames' part that very few companies could say is rivaled, and was certainly an excess in spending on the hope that it would pay off, and by God, it did. Following that, let's talk about Relink. So I don't know if you know, but Relink was a game that was in development hell for a long ass fucking time. Like I mentioned earlier, Cygames announced they were partnering with Platinum Games for the project. After the initial announcement, however, information went dark and was practically scarce all the way till early 2019 when they announced Platinum would no longer be developing the title. Now, what happened behind the scenes? Not many really know. Whether things started out good or if Platinum was basically making Relink like they made Babylon's Fall, it's entirely unsure. But the on-record statements were that Cygames put them on to develop the initial code, and then due to some conflicts of schedules or ability to perform the work past that base, Cygames elected to move the project from Platinum Games and instead give it to their newly opened Cygames Osaka in-house development studio as their sole project to start with. Now, in hindsight, since we all know Relink just released last year in February of 2024, I'm just gonna take a wild guess that much of the contribution Platinum provided was either thrown out or significantly modified that the end result would be barely recognizable to the build that they had in 2019. And keep in mind, while all of this was happening, Cygames was still A, developing Versus and subsequently Versus Rising with Arc System Works, B, regularly releasing content for the mobile game, C, still hosting extravagant IRL events and developing expensive merch, D, they also released 2.5 seasons of the anime, plus 2 anime seasons for a dead game that was receiving no more new content, and E, something that I neglected to mention that they started in the holiday of 2017 was their first roulette. This was the first time Cygames were giving their players more than 100 raw pools for a celebration with the potential to hit 200 plus. And unlike what we're asking of Kuro, this roulette actually costed Cygames more money than it would cost Kuro to give a free standard 5-star or paid selector. Why do I say this? It's because the characters related to the roulettes, Gachapin and Muku, are not owned by Cygames. Yes, you heard me. The first event Granblue did that gave players hundreds of easy free pulls was, guess what? A collab! Cygames paid for the license to use the characters Gachapin and Muku for their big Thanks to the Players event, and those characters were a relatively popular IP in Japan that have existed long before Cygames' own parent company, Cyber Agent, even existed. Said characters have shown up in a bunch of different things, some of which include one of the earliest Digimon series. And wanna guess how this whole roulette thing went? I'll give you a bit. Yes, this collab was a major success for Cygames. While we don't have numbers, the reason why we know it was a success is because, guess what? It came back. Not even a year later. The following anniversary in 2018, they brought the roulette back, and they did it again during the holiday season, and we've had roulette twice a year, every year, ever since. If this was not profitable enough, I assure you, it would have never returned, much like many of the random summer events we had that veterans will know about, such as the summer scratch cards and the dreaded summer lotto. Now, similarly, our other example is Nikke. While Shift Up has never done anything crazy to the degree that Cygames has, as you are aware, throughout the first couple years for Anniversary and Half Annie, Shift Up gave a good couple hundred pulls, no questions asked. And in that same time frame, guess what, Techless? They were also developing Stellar Blade. And I don't think I need to tell you at this point that the cost to develop Stellar Blade while they were still doing all of their other stuff with Nikke was so different than the cost it takes for Hoyo or Kuro to develop their games. This is why I personally think your take on this rewards matter is practically insane, with your only justification for it being that you were admitted into the Hoyo asylum, and now your perspective is insanely skewed toward these predatory practices when players should be demanding more. And yes, I know throughout all this you were probably calling me greedy, poor, and all sorts of mockeries. But guess what, bucko? While what I have spent in gacha is nothing compared to CCs like you that are able to reasonably fund it, I am a no enviosity. In just punishing Grey Raven alone, I've spent $7,000 or $8,000 easily. In Granblue, I've spent roughly 15 to 20 grand. FGO, I've also spent around the same amount. I am a whale, just like you and all of your content creator friends. I know what I'm talking about, and I promise you that making the excuses like you are is bad for everyone, and that will slowly lead Kuro to becoming another fucking Hoyo. And like I said in my previous video, it really pains me to say this because I absolutely loved Kuro for being one of the objectively best companies in the market with PGR since I first discovered them in 2020. And the more we let these encroachment slides, the worse it will be for all players, and trust me, I want to believe in Kuro. I really do. But trust can be very easy to break after slow encroachments, and your argument is just gaslighting players to not see the headlights coming from ahead. Again, I got no personal ill will against you and love what you do, but these excuses are a serious sign, and to have someone as big as you make light of these issues will only serve to make the rest of the market suffer. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Have a good day.